Chosen one. Before anything else, take a breath. Not a rushed breath. Not a distracted one. A slow breath. Because if you're here right now, this moment is not random. This is not an accident. This is not an algorithmic coincidence. This message didn't find you. It was released to meet you. There have been seasons where you felt unseen, overlooked, passed by, delayed while others were chosen, promoted, celebrated, or recognized. And somewhere deep inside, you asked the question you were afraid to say out loud. God, did you forget about me? But hear this clearly, chosen one. Your life was never overlooked. It was carefully held. Held in silence. Held in preparation. Held in protection. Held in timing. And today, heaven wants to correct a misunderstanding that has been quietly weighing on your heart. So stay with me. Because what you're about to hear will reframe your entire past and unlock your next season. One of the most dangerous lies the enemy ever whispered to a chosen one is this: if God wanted to use you, it would have happened by now. That lie has caused more spiritual damage than open attacks ever could. Because instead of attacking you directly, it attacked your interpretation of time. You watched others move faster. You watched doors open for people who seemed less prepared. You watched opportunities land in laps you felt you had been training for your entire life. And quietly, the lie settled in. Maybe I was missed. Maybe I was skipped. Maybe I'm too late. But chosen one, delay does not mean denial. Silence does not mean absence. Hidden does not mean forgotten. In Scripture, the most powerful assignments were never rushed. David was anointed long before he was crowned. Joseph was promised long before he was positioned. Moses was chosen long before he was sent. Their lives weren't overlooked. They were withheld until the world was ready for what they carried. And so were you. This part may sting, but it will heal you. You weren't held back because you were unworthy. You were held back because you were valuable. Not everything precious is displayed. Some things are preserved. You were kept out of certain rooms because those rooms would have drained you. You were kept away from certain people because their access to you would have damaged your calling. You were delayed from certain platforms because exposure before maturity would have cost you everything. There are blessings that look good on the outside but destroy the inside. God didn't just protect your future. He protected your identity. While others were being seen, you were being shaped. While others were being applauded, you were being strengthened. While others were being promoted publicly, you were being fortified privately. Heaven was not ignoring you. Heaven was investing in you. Let's talk about the season you don't post about. The season you don't explain. The season people misunderstand. The quiet season. That season where prayers felt unanswered. That season where effort didn't match outcome. That season where obedience didn't bring immediate reward. Chosen one, that silence was not punishment. It was refinement. Silence is where clarity is formed. Silence is where ego dies. Silence is where discernment sharpens. God removes the noise not to isolate you, but to introduce you to yourself. In that season, you learn to hear without applause, to stand without validation, to trust without evidence. That is not weakness. That is elite spiritual training. Only those who can survive silence are trusted with influence. Chosen one of the hardest things you've had to endure wasn't the waiting. It was the misunderstanding. It was being judged by people who only saw a fragment of your story and thought they understood the whole thing. It was watching others form opinions about you based on what was visible, while completely missing what was being built beneath the surface. People couldn't see what God was doing in you because God wasn't working on the outside first. He was working on the foundation. And foundations are always hidden. You see, most people are trained to recognize movement, noise, and visibility as signs of progress. They celebrate what can be posted, announced, or publicly affirmed. But God often moves in the opposite direction. When He prepares a chosen one, He pulls them inward, not outward. That's why your growth didn't look impressive to others. That's why your obedience went unnoticed. That's why your discipline looked like stagnation. People were looking for results. God was building roots. And roots grow in darkness. What people misread as delay was actually depth forming. What they misjudged as inconsistency was actually internal alignment. What they dismissed as limitation was God expanding your capacity. Chosen one, people couldn't see your discipline because it didn't come with applause. They couldn't see your restraint because it didn't look like ambition. They couldn't see your obedience because it didn't produce instant reward. But heaven saw every quiet "No," you said. Every time you walked away when you could have stayed. Every moment you chose integrity over attention. While others were showcasing progress, you were learning discernment. While others were building platforms, you were building character. While others were chasing visibility, you were learning how to carry weight. And that kind of work doesn't photograph well. Another reason people couldn't see what God was doing in you is because God intentionally limited their access. Not everyone was meant to understand your process. Not everyone was qualified to interpret your season. Not everyone was safe to witness your becoming. If people had seen the full picture too early, they would have spoken on it, compared it, rushed it, or tried to interfere with it. So God kept it quiet. He allowed you to look ordinary so the work could be extraordinary. He allowed you to be underestimated so pride wouldn't contaminate purpose. He allowed people to mislabel you so you would learn not to live for labels. And yes, there were moments when their misunderstanding hurt. When they assumed you lacked drive. When they thought you weren't serious. When they treated you like you were behind. But chosen one, their blindness was protection. Because if they had known what was forming in you, they would have tried to access it before it was ready. God doesn't reveal what He hasn't finished. There's also this truth you need to hear. People measure timing. God measures readiness. They were watching the calendar. God was watching your heart. They were counting years. God was counting surrender. They were waiting for proof. God was waiting for trust. And when the trust was complete, when the foundation was secure, God prepared the reveal. That's why your next season will confuse people. That's why your emergence will feel sudden. That's why your growth will look, overnight, to those who weren't present for the process. They didn't see the internal battles. They didn't see the pruning. They didn't see the nights you questioned yourself but still showed up. They only saw the surface. But heaven saw everything. Chosen one, don't waste energy trying to correct people's perception of your past. Let your future speak. Because when God reveals what He's been building, explanations won't be necessary. What was hidden will become evident. What was doubted will be undeniable. And what was misunderstood will finally make sense. Not because you defended yourself, but because God finished His work. Let me say something that will shift your perspective. Some callings are heavy. Not glamorous heavy. Responsibility heavy. Influence heavy. Impact heavy. Accountability heavy. God does not rush weighty assignments. He strengthens the carrier first. If your life felt harder than others, if your lessons felt deeper, if your endurance was tested repeatedly, it wasn't because you were weak. It's because what you're carrying requires strength most people never develop. You were being trained to hold blessings without losing yourself, to lead without pride, to be seen without being consumed. That takes time. That takes pruning. That takes holding. There was a shift inside you at some point. You stopped asking, "When?" and started saying, "If you say so." That moment mattered. That's when heaven knew. This one can be trusted. Because faith that demands a deadline is still immature. But faith that rests without answers is powerful. You learn to move without applause, to obey without guarantees, to continue without clarity. And that's when things quietly began aligning behind the scenes. Here's the part people won't understand. When your season changes, it will look sudden. But it won't be sudden to heaven. It will be the release of everything that was stored, everything that was built, everything that was trained. Years of preparation will show up in moments. Decades of growth will manifest in days. Private victories will become public testimonies. And people will say, "Where did this come from?" They won't know about the nights you cried silently, the doors you watched close, the patience you were forced to develop. They'll only see the fruit, not the root system. And that's okay. You don't owe explanations for timing God designed. Chosen one, something has already changed. Even if you can't fully explain it yet. This shift didn't arrive loudly. There was no announcement, no dramatic sign in the sky. It came quietly. A subtle internal alignment. A calm replacing confusion. A steady assurance where anxiety once lived. That's how real spiritual shifts happen. Before anything changes around you, something changes within you. You may have noticed it in small ways. You're no longer panicking the way you used to. Certain things don't trigger you anymore. You're less interested in proving yourself. You're more selective with your energy. That's not withdrawal. That's alignment. God doesn't always change your circumstances first. Sometimes He changes your positioning. And right now, heaven is repositioning you. What was once held is now being released, but with precision. Not rushed. Not forced. Not chaotic. Deliberate. This is the season where doors don't just open, they recognize you. Where opportunities don't feel heavy, they feel fitting. Where connections don't drain you, they confirm you. And the most important sign of this shift is peace. Not excitement. Not adrenaline. Peace. The kind of peace that doesn't need to convince anyone. The kind of peace that remains even when the details aren't clear. The kind of peace that tells you, I don't need to hurry. I'm right on time. Chosen one, the shift that's happening now is not external validation, it's internal authority. You're no longer asking for permission. You're no longer waiting for approval. You're no longer shrinking to stay safe. You're standing, quietly, firmly, confidently. And because of that, God is trusting you with movement. This is also why certain things are falling away without effort. Conversations feel misaligned. Environments feel restrictive. Old desires no longer satisfy. That's not loss. That's separation. God is gently removing what cannot follow you into this next phase. Not everything that walked with you can walk with you now. And this time, you're not fighting it. You're allowing it. Because you finally understand. What leaves is not punishment. It's positioning. Chosen one, this shift doesn't come with pressure. It comes with clarity. You're not trying to become someone new. You're becoming more yourself. The version of you that's grounded. The version of you that listens before reacting. The version of you that moves with wisdom instead of impulse. This is maturity speaking. And heaven responds to maturity. That's why the next steps will feel natural. Not forced. Not desperate. Not rushed. You'll know what to say yes to. You'll know what to walk away from. You'll know when to move and when to wait. Because discernment is now leading you. Chosen one, the shift that's happening now is subtle, but it's irreversible. You won't go back to who you were. You won't think the way you used to. You won't tolerate what once felt normal. And that's a sign that the holding season is ending. What was preserved is being released. What was prepared is being positioned. What was delayed is now aligned. And this time, you don't need a sign. You are the sign. Chosen one, before God accelerates you forward, there is one final work He does within you. He removes the residue. Because elevation with unresolved bitterness becomes a burden. And promotion without healing turns blessings into weight. You've been through moments that hurt more than you ever admitted. Times you were overlooked when you gave your best. Seasons when loyalty was met with silence. Periods when you were faithful and still left behind. And if you're honest, part of you wanted an explanation. Part of you wanted acknowledgement. Part of you wanted justice now. But God is asking you for something higher than vindication. He's asking you for release. Not because what they did was right. Not because your pain wasn't real. But because bitterness cannot travel where God is taking you. Bitterness ties you to the past. Healing frees you for the future. Chosen one, bitterness is subtle. It doesn't always look like anger. Sometimes it looks like distance. Sometimes it sounds like silence. Sometimes it hides behind strength and independence. But heaven sees it. And God, in His mercy, doesn't expose it to shame you. He exposes it to heal you. Because you were never meant to carry what hurt you. You were meant to outgrow it. Walking forward without bitterness doesn't mean pretending it didn't hurt. It means refusing to let the hurt define your next chapter. It means choosing peace even when an apology never comes. It means blessing without reconnecting. It means remembering without reliving. Chosen one, some people will never understand how deeply they affected you. Some seasons will never fully make sense. Some losses won't be explained until eternity. But clarity is not required for healing. Willingness is. And you are ready. You've grown enough to release what once controlled you. You've matured enough to forgive without reopening doors. You've healed enough to stop replaying what God has already redeemed. This is why God is telling you. Do not carry yesterday's wounds into tomorrow's assignment. Where you're going requires light hands, a clear heart, a free spirit. And notice this. You're no longer angry the way you used to be. You're no longer obsessed with being understood. You're no longer replaying every injustice. That's not numbness. That's healing. That's how you know God has been working. Chosen one, walking forward without bitterness also means releasing comparison. Releasing the timeline envy. Releasing the "they didn't deserve that" thoughts. Releasing the urge to measure your path against someone else's highlight reel. Comparison is bitterness in disguise. And you've outgrown it. Your journey was different because your assignment is different. Your delays were intentional because your impact is heavier. Your preparation was longer because your influence must last. Nothing was stolen from you. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was late. It was all working for you, even when it felt like it was working against you. As you step into what's next, walk lightly. Walk gratefully. Walk humbly. Not hardened. Not guarded. Not resentful. But open. Whole. Free. Because the future God has prepared for you doesn't need revenge. It doesn't need explanations. It doesn't need you to prove anything. It only needs you present. With a heart that trusts Him completely. Chosen one, this is how you move forward. Not carrying pain, but carrying peace. And that peace will take you farther than bitterness ever could. Chosen one. Your life was never overlooked. It was never forgotten. It was never dismissed. It was carefully held by a God who understood the weight of what He placed inside you. And now, the holding season is ending. Walk forward with humility. Walk forward with courage. Walk forward with trust. Because what God preserved, He now intends to release. And this time, nothing will be able to stop it. Chosen one, before you go, I want to speak to the givers, the ones whose hearts feel called to pour back into the vessel that pours into them. If this message awakened you, if it strengthened you, if it spoke to your spirit in a way only heaven could orchestrate, then I invite you, only if your heart feels led, to sow a $1 seed into this channel. Not because God needs it, but because giving is a spiritual law. A small seed carries big obedience. And God multiplies what is given with pure intention. Your $1 keeps this ministry alive, keeps the messages flowing, and helps this word reach the next chosen one who needs it. If you feel that nudge in your spirit, if you feel that gentle pull, you can plant your $1 seed using the link in the description. And if you can't or don't feel led, you are still loved, still seen, and still covered. Blessings to every giver, and blessings to every listener. Your seed moves heaven in ways you may never see. But God sees it all.